me after. You can talk to me for an hour after class if you want. All right, welcome live stream. I think I'm going here. Jenny, do you need a browser for anything, or you just be in your PDF?
No, just the slides. Yeah,
okay.
As long as I just know how to advance them.
I did not bring I don't have like a clicker.
That's fine.
But
I'm not worried about that. Just see arrows. Are you just in?
So the people here can see you
Me.
if you stand here.
Okay.
You can kind of rotate this around if you want to.
So I need to stand there then probably and not move so that.
Well, they're
anybody
going to
out
see
here-
this too.
Oh,
So,
okay. All right.
you know, you get what you get on
Okay.
the stream
Yeah.
sometimes. But you
Okay.
might, wave or something. But
Okay.
and let me hide this share thing. Make sure everything is good. Stop recording. It's streaming. So I just have this up in Acrobat, so just
Okay,
up and down.
Perfect. Yep.
Should do it.
Okay.
Now I'll introduce you. You want? I probably don't have all your latest info, but I'll try to
Oh, that's okay.
tell them what I know.
No need to stress about that.
Are we on time? 12 o'clock. All right, it's 12 o'clock. Thanks for coming, everybody. This is my friend Jenny Tod. She brought her husband Alec and her team member, come again? Leslie. She is from Jenny Tod Creative, and I've been watching her do awesome branding and graphic design and really cool stuff for a long time now. And so she came and spoke to us a few years back and got pretty good student feedback on her advice. Very good career advice, and just listen to what she says. She's been out there. She's been in the trenches, as they say. But I will let her take off. I'm going to fix the lights here for her so you can see the screen a little better. And I think you are all good.
Okay, cool. All right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, I guess now. Hi, everybody that's watching at home or live streaming. Thank you, everybody, just for tuning in, for being here in class. And I know you're going to be a very captive audience, so I appreciate that in advance. Thanks for listening. And hopefully something I have to say will help inspire you or encourage you, or just let you know you're not alone, I guess. So yeah, so I'm excited about that. Thank you, Josh, for having me. I am an IUPUI alum. I went to the Heron School of Art, so it's always fun to come back and be able to talk to students and just share some of what I've learned in hopes that it will encourage you. So thank you just again for being here. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about personal branding. So I'm excited about that. Before I go too deep into anything about my personal brand, I just want to tell you a little bit about me personally. So this is my family. My son Roman is 4. He just turned 4. And my husband Alec, who's here in class. But for those of you watching at home, he is here on the screen, and we'll be celebrating 10 years of marriage this year. So they are my world, and I love them, and I couldn't do what I do without them. So thankful for them. My son is like pretty darn cute too. So I know I'm biased, but he's pretty handsome. So outside of just family things, I also am a runner. So I love doing long distance runs. I was a former athlete, so I love competing. I also love Mexican food and Moscow mules. So if we have something in common, that's awesome. Just a few little things about me. We also really enjoy coffee in the coffee space, and going to coffee shops and spending time together as a family. So that's a little bit about me. Professionally, as Josh said, I am the CEO and creative director at Jenny Tod Creative. This is my team, myself, my husband, who is our operations director, and Leslie, who you see here, is visiting with us today. And she's an art director on my team. And then I also have a designer. His name is Evan. He's there in the middle. And they help me do what I do every day. I couldn't do it without them. But it's been fun to grow and develop the team into what it is now. So we get to work with some amazing brands and clients. These are just a few of them. So maybe there's somebody up there you recognize, but everything from breweries and kombucha brands, retail spaces, boutiques, to a lot of tech brands, foundations, nonprofits, schools, coffee shops, churches, kind of all over the board. So it's been really fun for me to be able to experience different brands and get to help them in different ways, all kind of pulling back into the design space. So I really feel like we pride ourselves on being versatile as designers, because it's about conveying their message, not about our style. So I find that that's really important for us as a company. So that's a little bit about the work we do. For those clients, a lot of the work that we are doing is brand related projects, as would seem fitting since I'm talking about personal brand. But we also do a lot of websites, a lot of digital design, kind of all over the board, print design, things like that. So that kind of leads into what we're going to talk about today, which is personal brand. And so just for anybody that's maybe not familiar with that term, really, I like to kind of define it in this way as like positioning yourself as an authority in your industry, differentiating yourself from your competition, building your reputation. And obviously that can apply to a brand, a company brand, but also to yourselves as a personal brand. So I know that this may be applicable to a lot of you as you start to market yourself, whether that's for a job, to get clients, if you own your own business, in any aspect of your career that you're going to be moving into. You have to figure out how you can differentiate yourself to basically sell yourself as your product. In a personal brand, you are the product, you are branding yourself. So we're going to kind of go through and talk a little bit about the strategy that I found really successful in doing this personally. But before we get there, I wanted to give you a little bit of a backstory on my own personal brand. So just very much like you all, I graduated from IUPUI. I was getting married to my husband. And so I knew that I needed to I needed to create a personal brand for myself. I was getting ready to get married, so my name was going to be changing. And so I kind of decided, hey, I can't brand myself as one person with one name and then in 5 months change that name and confuse the market. So instead, I branded myself as Turquoise Feathers. There was some meaning there behind the words and the owl symbolism in my family. And so I thought it was a great way to start. So I marketed myself as that and worked under that name for a couple of years. And then after kind of as a family deciding that I wanted to go back to work full time and I wanted to work probably in an agency setting or in-house somewhere, I knew that I had to kind of shift that because I was selling myself now. Previously, I was kind of selling my service as like, hey, let me do your logo or let me do your wedding invitations or something like that. Now I was selling myself. So I had to create a brand that reflected me personally. And I wanted to be able to go out and sell that to agencies or jobs. So I carried over the kind of feather idea into the middle brand that you're seeing there, which was just myself, Jenny Tod. And then I did that for about 6 or 7 years. And just actually more recently, as I've grown and developed my own brand now outside of working full time, I realized that it was important to kind of brand myself now as a company because I have a team and we are a creative studio. And so now it's been recent, about 3 or 4 months ago, we just launched the new Jenny Tod Creative brand, which is what you're seeing on the right. You're still seeing kind of that like paying homage to what was and where I started and where I came from, which I think is really important, but allowing it to take us into the future. So I'll go a little more into the strategy kind of behind these when we get into kind of the meat of what I'm going to share with you. But I at least wanted to give you a landscape. I think maybe one of the most important things I want you to see here is just that it has grown and developed. So as you start this process for yourself, just know that you don't have to, I think a lot of people go into it with fear that like, I'm going to brand myself as the wrong thing, or I'm going to create something for myself that may not be accurate down the road, but just know that it can evolve with you. You as a person are evolving, you professionally will evolve, creatively will evolve. And so your brand can evolve with you. I think one of the biggest things is just starting. So I just wanted to show you that in a similar way, I have done that as well. And so let's kind of get into the strategy around this a little bit. So I kind of broke this down into 3 sections. For those of you who like to take notes or remember things in number order, we have 3, starts with strategy, moves into design, and then implementation. So this is actually a very similar process to what I, myself and my team walk our clients through when we are creating a brand for them as a company. It's very similar. So I think that's, it's just very telling that a personal brand is very much a brand still, but it's just you selling yourself. So we always start with strategy. In any brand that we do for any client, you have to understand the why before you can create something that looks beautiful. If you create a beautiful logo that has 0 meaning or 0 tie to what it's representing, it won't be successful, even if it looks great. So I think that that's really important to think about. These are a few questions that we ask some of our clients that I think very accurately can be kind of transitioned to asking yourself as you're starting to brand who you are and how you want to present yourself. What makes you unique? So like I said, you are the brand, you're selling yourself. How are you unique from the next person sitting in this classroom, applying for the same job, pitching for the same types of clients? How are you special? How are you unique? What differentiates you from those others? Because that's how you're gonna sell yourself. You can't try to be someone else's style or have someone else's personality. It just won't work. So you have to understand that about yourself first. And then what's your why? I think that's really important. Understanding why you chose this field, why you do this, I think will really help you to sell yourself, because whatever you're passionate about, that's what's going to overflow. And that's what potential employers or companies are going to kind of they're going to want to buy into that with you. They're going to want to see that passion and invest in that. What's your mission? That's kind of more of like a mission, vision, values kind of thing from like a company standpoint. We ask companies a lot, like, what's your mission statement? Some people write mission statements for themselves. Just kind of another way of asking, like, what's your why? Why do you do this? What are personal values? So things that are important to you as a human, I think are things that you want to then reflect in your brand. You want to also seek out opportunities with like-minded clients or employees or other, professional opportunities with people who have like-minded values as you. What words would you use to describe yourself? So when we ask this to clients, we ask them to say 5 words that they feel like represent their company, and then 5 words that they want their clients to talk about them with. So understanding what are the descriptive words that you want people to maybe describe about you. So what do you want others to feel when you interact with them or when you're creating for them or working with them? What sorts of things are important to you? And then I put this on here at the end because I think it's really important in the next one, and I wanted to lead into that a bit, but who is your audience? So as you start to develop your personal brand, this is the language we talk with clients about, but it's similar for you in that who is the person who's going to be seeing your brand? Is it a potential employer? And maybe it's a specific industry that you want to work in. And that employer, as you think about different industries, I think about, the IT industry versus the retail industry. versus maybe a nonprofit or a religious industry. Like depending on where you see yourself and where you want to go, think about who your audience is that's going to be viewing your brand, because that will come into play kind of as we move into the next phase. So just understand who it is that you're targeting. So once we've taken time to understand the strategy and we know, so I guess one other thing I wanted to hit on here, this is actually I wanted to share a good example of somebody I think is doing this really well, understanding who they are. So Lessonly is somebody, they're not really a startup anymore, but they're a growing and thriving tech company who actually just got acquired recently by a much larger brand. They were based here in Indianapolis and now they've been acquired, but I actually worked for them for a while and now they're a client of mine. But I love how they've kind of visualized their company values. So they've like really played this out and shown how important this is to them, that the values that they have internally are something that they're willing to actually, visualize and have in their space. So things like, having difficult conversations, asking clarifying questions, putting their learners who are their clients or their people they're selling to, putting them first, sharing before they're ready, highlighting what's working. You can tell that they value like not taking themselves too seriously and having a little bit of fun, but also putting their clients first. And so this was important to them. These are things that they worked on developing before we ever created a brand for them. So just wanting to show you kind of a representation of how that starts to, come to life. So then we get to move into what I think is the most fun, which is of course the design. Obviously we're talking about graphic design here. So I'm assuming a lot of you also find that part to be really fun. But once you've kind of spent the time developing the strategy of what you're trying to share, it allows you inspiration to then move into the design phase. So you want to visualize that strategy. So understanding who you are, what's your why do you do this? I think is the prime thing to play into the visual brand that you're creating, because then gives you an opportunity when someone sees your logo, sees your website, it gives you a chance to explain that story to them. Maybe they get a hint of what there is happening there, but it allows you the chance to actually tell them more of a story. So, some questions I put in here is like, how do you capture somebody's attention? Thinking about that when it comes to the actual tangibles of creating your personal brand and your visual brand. How do you capture somebody's attention? You want to create something that, yes, not only tells a story, but is so visually pleasing that someone sees it and right away they're like, ooh, what is that? Like, what could that be about? Well, I want to hear more. What will resonate with your audience? So who are the people you're selling yourself to and what might stand out to them? Is there something that you know about a company you're trying to pursue that is going to stand out? Circle Kombucha, which is a kombucha brand here in Indy, if you're familiar, we've been talking with them for a bit about doing some work, and they are really adamant about healthy living and healthy beverages and creating a lifestyle that is living a healthy life. And so it gave me an entry point to say, hey, like, I'm really into these things and this is a part of who I am. This is why I feel like I'm a good fit to work with you, because we have similar values. Like, I'm a runner, I stay in shape, I eat really well. Those things are important to me and I know they're important to you. So it gives you a way to kind of resonate or touch base with your audience in a way that they're going to remember you. Obviously, you want that to be authentic. Don't sell yourself with something that you really don't mean, of course. But if those things are important to you, then showcase that, especially if you're looking to work for or with a company that has some strong values like that you also hold. It's really cool to be able to share those. So then when we kind of think about the actual like tangibles of creating a system, I did want to hit on a couple of specific things that I think are really important. Creating a brand system that's really versatile and that's consistent. Those are like two of my biggest, advice points on creating your own personal brand is create something that's versatile and create something that can be consistent. I think some of the best brands have those two qualities about them. So I wanted to show you an example of a brand that we did as a company. So we worked with the National Society of Collegiate Scholars, which is an honors organization that works with universities just like this one to help provide them opportunities and to provide them with resources for high achieving students. And so they came to us with a very old, very outdated looking visual brand. And they said, hey, we want something that appeals to college students, that also can appeal to their parents, because sometimes those are the ones who are pushing them to do certain things, which I'm sure you guys are aware of. So mainly we want it to appeal to college students, but it also has to be, it can't turn parents away from wanting to be involved as well. But we want it to be a little bit playful and a little bit unique while still feeling really modern. So we were able to create a system for them. We started with the logo itself. And the primary logo is this one here that you're seeing, this kind of like stacked version with all the text with the symbol and everything. We started there. We created that identity, that logo first. We always start with the primary one. And then we created kind of a system of pieces, which you can see all of those elements here. So as I was talking about something that's versatile, think about all of the elements and pieces that you're going to need to put your brand on so that when you create the system, it works across the board. You've got kind of the like wider horizontal logo, which is kind of up at the top on the letterhead. You've got the envelope, which has like the NSCS, just the emblem with the letters and the flame and the torch. You've also got just the flame and the shield there in the bottom left on the business cards, as well as like patterning and elements and details. We actually pulled the flame and the torch kind of handle out of the logo, and that's what you see in the pattern. So a lot of the details and elements that all came together to create one versatile and cohesive looking brand is really important. So as you're thinking about that for yourself, don't create a logo that's like so uber specific that you can't use it in other versatile ways. You want to create kind of those elements and pieces that can work across the board. Because as we get into the last piece, we're going to talk about implementation, and that's where a lot of this stuff starts to come into play. And then, like I mentioned, consistency. So obviously, not every single piece that you see here is the same color, has the same exact font on it, has the same type layout. Everything is slightly different, but it all works together. So you have a color palette that's been created that allows you to kind of switch some things up, but still create consistency and cohesion among all of the pieces. So I thought it was a really good representation of how we were able to take a strategy of something. They came to us with very specific wants and needs of how the brand was going to be conveyed out into the market. And we were able to, create a very cohesive and consistent brand for them. So then the last piece is kind of the implementation side, which I didn't go into as much detail as I probably could have here. So if you guys have specific questions, definitely open to answering those. But once you've worked on the strategy of who you are and you've understood what you're trying to sell, what makes you unique and how can you use that to market yourself, then you've created this look and feel. So you've got maybe a logo, some colors, some typography that goes along with it. You've started to use those pieces in different ways. Now you need to start implementing that brand. So where will your brand be seen? For you guys, it could be a lot of different places, but the things that come to mind right away is, if you're going to be applying for jobs, you need to have a portfolio. So nowadays it feels like you can't really do that without having a website. So getting your work out there and starting to put it out for people to see. There's a lot of, you guys probably know all this, but there's tons of options for websites, things that are free, things that you can pay for. There's places like Behance and Dribble where you can actually put up your portfolio for free. You can send people there. You can do, Wix and Squarespace and WordPress websites and all kinds of stuff now, but it almost feels like you've got to have a place where all of your work lives and that brand is front and center. So you're able to say, hey, this is who I am. These are the things that are important to me. And this is the work that represents that. Where should your audience be finding you? This kind of goes hand in hand, but if there's things that you're wanting to do, you're wanting to brand yourself maybe more on social media, on TikTok, on YouTube, you're wanting to do stuff there, then your work should be there. If you're wanting people to find your work there, then be there. If you're wanting to get design work and portfolio work, then be on some of those design portfolio websites. So just think about where you're hoping your audience will find you and start to put work out there. Document and discuss your work kind of goes hand in hand as well. But, obviously documenting the work that you've done, taking, photos of it, documenting it, mocking things up, having representations of the work that you've done so that others can see it will be really helpful in selling yourself. I also think it's important to start learning how to talk about your work. Part of, your brand is your story. It's who you are. So take a piece that you've done and think about how that relates to who you are. Why did you do it? Maybe it was a project that you did because you specifically have a love for a certain brand and that fits right into who you are. Maybe you're an avid outdoorsman or a hiker. And so you did some work, hypothetical work for Patagonia, and you want to put that out there. That's a great representation of who you are and your own brand, because those values are important to you. So put out that work and talk about it, relate it to your own brand. How does that tie together with what you're about? And then share it with the world. I know a lot of times we get maybe a little bit like cautious or scared to like put ourselves out there. Sometimes that is hard. Fear of rejection, fear that people will maybe critique it or say things you don't like so much about it. Maybe they'll love it. You just don't really know. But all I can say there is like, don't be afraid to try, put things out there, put them out on social media. Most of the time, the positives are going to outweigh the negatives. They'll probably be there, but you're going to get some really positive feedback. You're going to get people seeing your stuff and at least talking about it, which is always a good thing. And just knowing that like you're putting your stuff out there for the world to see. And then this one is really kind of important to me too, but creating your own opportunities. I think, you spend all this time understanding yourself, developing your brand, putting your work out there for people to see. And sometimes at that point, people, including, I've been guilty of this too, will just kind of like sit and wait for stuff to come and be like, okay, I did all the stuff I'm supposed to do. Now, where's the work? Where are the jobs? Why haven't they come to me? And I think that, that we just have to kind of shift our mindset and know that like you've done all the right steps and you're moving in the right direction. But sometimes it's about us creating our own opportunities. So don't be afraid to take initiative. Don't be afraid to step out and do something maybe out of the ordinary. I like to tell this story because it feels very fitting for this one. When I was in high school, I needed to get a part-time job and I really didn't want to work anywhere. I was kind of like, I want to do art. I want to create things and I don't want to work a normal job like everybody else I know is doing. So I thought, okay, what can I do to sell myself to somebody so they'll hire me? And I knew there was a photographer in town who I had heard really good things about. She was a good leader. She was a really good photographer. And one of my friends was having their senior pictures done by her. So they said, hey, she's going to be over at my house photographing me. And I mentioned to her that you're interested in a job. You should just come over and sell yourself to her. And I was like, that's a really good idea. Why would I not do that? So I put together a portfolio. I pulled together some of my like very probably crappy photography work at the time, but it was something to show her that I was taking initiative, pulled that work together. I showed a few like postcards I had designed and thinking like, maybe I could do that for like a senior portrait session for somebody who was trying to get, send out invites for their senior open house, whatever. So I pulled some stuff together. I was over there waiting when she got there and I was like, hey, nice to meet you. This is who I am. I'm looking for a part-time job. This is why I think I could be helpful for you. I'm like, no pressure, but I just want to introduce myself. I want to take initiative and, I look forward to connecting with you soon. And got a call from her, a couple of days later, and she hired me and I worked for her for 5 years through high school into college. She gave me my first chance to photograph a wedding, which led me to wedding photography that I did for a couple of years. So, you just never know by taking initiative and making your own opportunities sometimes. Like you never know what's going to come out of it. I know that as I am looking to hire new people, new employees for Jenny Tod Creative, the ones that stand out to me are the ones that take the initiative, that approach me, because I am busy and half the time I forget. And if they take the time to put in the work and do that for me, it shows me that that's how they're going to work when they're in the job. They're going to actually take the time and the initiative to do things I don't even ask them to do because they've shown me that. So by taking your own initiative to do some of that stuff, create those opportunities, reach out to individuals or mentors who you look up to and just say, hey, can we grab coffee? Like, can you critique my portfolio? Can we just have a conversation? Because the people who do that to me just show that they are interested in doing whatever they have to do. They're willing to work hard. They're willing to try new things, do something that I didn't ask them to do. And a lot of times that can really pay off. So I did a similar thing when I was early in my design career. I reached out to a designer who I really admired. Her name is Amy McAdams Gonzalez. And she was running a like small design studio, kind of just freelancing, but I loved her work. And I was like, hey, I don't know if you do this, but like, I'd love if you would mentor me. Like, I know that's a big ask, but like, could we just meet every month and just I'll pay for your coffee and just like share with me knowledge, like just teach me. And she's like, yeah, let's do it. And so I met with her once a month for a year. And she's one of my best friends now in the design community. We help each other out a ton. We share work with each other. So you just never know how someone's going to respond. Most of the time, they're going to, of course, be willing to help. People, I feel like in this industry, love to mentor and help and share whenever they can. So a lot of times it's going to be a positive experience one way or another. You're going to meet them, talk with them. Maybe they'll introduce you to somebody else if they can't. So just lots of really great opportunities when you put yourself out there. So overall, I feel like I hope that those kind of key points have helped inspire you, have helped encourage you with understanding kind of the strategy behind what you're trying to do with your own personal brand, giving you some advice on creating a personal brand for yourself from a design perspective, and then hopefully, help encourage you in terms of implementing that out into the world. So I'm excited to see what you all do and where you all go from here. So please, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, anything, like my email, our website's there. I'm on all the socials. That's my personal one and our Jenny Tod Creative one as well. So even if I couldn't get to it, if you want to talk with Leslie or Evan or Alec, any of my team, you can message us on there or shoot me an email and I'll direct you. So I'm happy to connect you with anybody I can. If you're interested in a certain type of job or a certain type of industry and you just don't know where to start, like shoot me a message and maybe I know somebody I can connect you with, or I can answer questions for you. So it's a open door policy to, if you want to just get coffee, like let's do it. So however I can help, that's what I'm here for. So thank you guys so much for listening, for being here and just being willing to learn. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll be here to chat if you want to after as well. So.
Questions? I'm gonna check online as well.
Yeah.
Pull the chat up in case anybody. Unfortunately, the majority is probably in the Zoom room here. We got the majority in here. We got 14 people. So any questions online, I can relay those to Jenny as well.
Yeah. 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 That's a great question.
You might repeat it slightly.
Sure.
Just
Yep.
for the.
So she just was asking kind of how did I make the decision to brand myself originally for my services instead of branding myself as like me, Jenny Tod personally? How did I kind of choose one over the other, and why I did that. So yeah, I think you're exactly right with what you were starting to get at, which is that I knew that going into marriage, my husband was working in pastoral ministry. And so we knew we were going to be traveling a little bit. I didn't see myself getting a full-time job somewhere right away. And so I did kind of choose to market myself as an offering more than, hey, you're hiring me. It's like, you're hiring my little company that I have to do services. I think honestly, that question is one of the most difficult ones to answer, is like, there's still so many companies out there that are a person or a duo that are branded as a company versus branded as like Jenny Tod Creative. Miles Design, Josh Miles is somebody that I've looked up to, and he started out branding himself as Miles Design, which was him, and it grew into a company. But I've also got friends out there, John and Stacy McClure, who run CoMotion, which isn't named after them specifically. So I think, to answer your question in the long way of answering it, is that I think that yes, that's why I did it, was because I knew I was selling a service offering. I wasn't like trying to get a job. I wasn't trying to sell Jenny Tod, hire Jenny Tod. It was, hey, I can do this design work for you. And it didn't really matter what name I used to do that. But the reason I quickly shifted to myself was because I started to make a name for who I was. And so I knew that people would recognize my name more than they would recognize this small brand that I had created, because I was selling myself then at that point. It's conversations we've had at Jenny Tod Creative a lot, is like, should we transition to something that's not based after me, that's more based on a company as a whole? Because I do think when you have a team of people, now it's not, I don't want people to hire me. I want people to hire my team. And so, yeah, I think it's just thinking through, for you personally, are you selling yourself and your own services to a company, or even as a freelancer to a client, or are you selling, a group of people or a service offering? So. Yeah. Great question. So she was asking about, like, if you haven't quite developed a style fully yet for your own personal work, or a personal brand, should you kind of develop that over time, or maybe how should you go about that? Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways I could answer that question. I think the first way that comes to mind is, right away when you're starting, like, you shouldn't have to feel the pressure to have that developed. So I would honestly say right now, I don't even know that I could tell you what my style is now. And I've been doing this for over 10 years. But I do know that I created something at the beginning that I felt was a representation of who I was and what I wanted to do. And if you get worried about the style maybe not being exactly right, I would just dial it back and go simple. Like, don't feel like you have to go overboard with, like, it's got to look like my work and it has to feel like all my work feels. Maybe just go simple and dial it back and say, hey, it's actually just about, like, you understanding that I do this work across the board and I do all different styles. And so maybe your personal brand is like a very simple font, very clean, like not a lot to it. I know that my work is more rooted in like handmade art because I went to art school. So I did a lot of drawing. I did a lot of like stuff with Procreate, and like I was making a lot by hand. So that's where I went with my personal brand. Was I just knew that that was a value of mine, was pulling that into my work. So I think if you can just kind of think about, what do you enjoy right now? What is there a thread that runs through all of your work that maybe isn't exactly what it looks like, but maybe a specific piece or a value or something like that? Maybe use that as kind of your jumping off point, and then you won't feel so much pressure to have it look like all of your work does. And then I would also just say, like, just know it can evolve. So if you create something now and in 2 years, you're like, actually, I really like this style better and all of my work is starting to look that way, then that's a great opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to refresh what my brand looks like and create something that now is more reflective of what I do now. So I think that that's perfectly okay. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, I think the worst thing you can do is get stuck, right? And stress yourself out about making the perfect thing that you don't make anything. You know, you got to throw some stuff at the wall.
Yeah. And a lot of times when I see brands for like potential employees or people that I want to work with, like I tend to go more towards ones that are simple anyways, because I don't need to see all of the craziness and all the stuff like happening unless that's really true to you. But otherwise, like I'm good just knowing that like you can put a really clean typeface on something and you can design like a really clean and modern and simple piece. Sometimes that's even better than going the other direction and going a bit overboard with it. So hopefully that takes some of the pressure off too.
I have one from YouTube from Courtney. What platform should you promote yourself on when starting out?
Good question. So I guess two answers to that. When I was starting out right out of school and I was promoting like my services, honestly, I used social media. I posted on Facebook and Instagram. I just started posting my work, pictures of things I had done for other people. I would try to tag those people as much as possible because maybe they would share it too, or they would comment and other people would see it. And I got most of my like wedding invitation and logo work from just being on social media. I had a website portfolio, I think on Behance probably, and a few people saw that, but really it was the connections of people that I had already and word of mouth where they saw me post something and then they would share it with their friends or they would hire me for something else. So I would say that was my primary marketing tool when I was first starting. I would also say that like human connection was the other thing I did a lot of, which has really bled over into my business now. I honestly just reached out to people who I knew, maybe who worked for a company, who owned a company, who had a connection with somebody, maybe in a marketing department somewhere. I actually got my first job at Element 3 at the marketing agency here in Indy from one of my old professors at Heron. She worked there and I had reached out to her saying I was interested in something full time. And she said, well, that's great because we have a job. I want you to come apply. I want you to come interview for it. So that was just through making that connection with a past colleague or, professor or something like that. And then when I started doing my business full time, I honestly, the only marketing I did, which is crazy to me, is I emailed like 50 people on my email list who I knew I had worked with before, who worked in agencies, who had businesses, or who I had connections with. I emailed all 50 of them and said, hey, in a month, please don't share this outwardly because I need to tell my employer, but in a month, I am going to work for myself full time and I am open to any and all projects. And I booked myself for 2 months just on those emails alone. I got work for 2 months worth of, freelance projects. So I quit my job. I had 2 months worth of work lined up. And then I started hustling to get more work while I was doing those projects. And that word of mouth was all it took for me to get more business. So granted, I had worked in jobs where I had connections with people and they had connections. But again, it's just kind of like, you never know what those connections will lead to and who those people will know that they might refer you out to, or they might not need work, but hey, I have someone who just asked me if I knew of somebody that did design. I'll refer you. So you just never know where those connections will lead to. So.
Do you have any comment on just like freelancing in general, like that lifestyle? Like, what do you recommend it? Is it pure insanity or?
Good question. I would say that it is not all it's cracked up to be. I think that a lot of people like have kind of a perception that freelance is just like, I'm going to be my own boss and I'm just going to like work whenever I want to. And some of that is true, but it also takes a ton of work because now you are running every single aspect of a business. You have to get work. You have to be the salesperson. You have to be the finance director. You have to get paid. And so you have to send out invoices. You have to do taxes now. You have to oversee every aspect of your business because as a freelancer, you're still running a business. You are making money. and the government will take it from you. So you have to know what you're doing. And that's not to scare you at all, because it can be an incredible job. That's where I started and I love it. So just know that there is going to be more work than just designing cool stuff on your own. There's going to be other aspects of it that you'll have to also do. And if you're willing to put in that work, it's a great opportunity. It gives you the flexibility to, if you want to have a family, if you want to travel, if you want to like just be your own boss, it's a great thing that we as designers can do that not a lot of people can. So if you have specific questions about that, or you want to do that and you want to kind of know some tips or tricks on like, hey, how do I get started like creating the LLC or getting like tax stuff in place or any of that, like feel free to email me, and I'll probably have my husband email you because he is better at that stuff. But I did start out doing it and it is very much possible. But just know that like there is some struggle in it, and you will have to go out and get your own work. You will have to find your own clients and work hard for those clients, but it can be really fruitful. So.
And there's help out there for, you don't have to be a tax expert to
Yes.
jump into freelance. Like,
Absolutely.
and one of those I think you've had some involvement with is the AIGA.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
is that or any other, they may not know about it. So
Yeah. So AIGA is, it used to stand for something else. Now it's just kind of the Association for Design. And there's an Indianapolis chapter. There's also Creative Mornings, Indy, which is here, and they meet once a month. So there's a lot of other resources like that where AIGA, I think you can go on their website and they actually will help provide you with like guidance on how to do your taxes yourself. Or there's some people in Indy that will help you that won't charge you as much as maybe a general accountant would, and they'll help you get set up and get started. So they'll offer some help that way. There's also just other people in that community that are designers that are freelancing that you can kind of step alongside and like move forward together with, which is kind of nice because you're doing it on your own. And sometimes that can be really daunting to not have anybody else there to kind of help you along the way. So it's a great resource for other people in the design community who might be freelancing as well. So yeah, back there.
Yeah, we do like how
Great question. I would say on average to onboard and like understand and learn about a client, we're usually talking a couple of weeks at least. So 2 to 3 weeks maybe, which is just like getting all the paperwork done and getting contracts signed and getting invoices, like an initial invoice paid, and then learning about them and understanding their competitors and trying to do some research, usually 2 to 3 weeks probably. And then it really depends kind of the extent of how far we go on what kind of a project we're doing. So if we're doing like a new name for them, it's going to be a lot more time doing research than if we're just creating maybe an updated website. We're going to do a whole different set of research. So in that type of a project, now we're going to be understanding their sitemap of their website and what's the structure of things and what kind of information are you trying to convey? What type of actions do you want your clients to take? So it kind of depends on the project specifically, but maybe if you add on another week or two to that based on the project itself, you're maybe at like a month of onboarding. And a lot of times it's a funny question because a lot of times clients are like, I need this thing done and I need it done in like a week. And you're like, I don't even know who you are yet. And I don't understand the goals of your project. So I can't even like get started like moving pixels around for you. But a lot of times it's just about educating them because they don't get that fully. They just, sometimes clients are just like, oh yeah, just like put some stuff together, like do a design for me. And you're like, what? But you just have to educate them. Hey, happy to do that, but I just really want to understand more about your business so that I can create a design that's going to have an impact for you, that's going to create a return on the investment they're spending in paying you. So yeah.
Like I said, a client is market, and once you do something, you walk away from it, takes to the shit. So you charge like a monthly payment package, like what's the payment model like based off?
Yeah, great question. So it differs for every client, as you would expect, but we have moved to a place where we, as much as possible, try to do retainer models for clients. So we'll do large branding projects for them. And then we'll say, hey, we know you're going to have a lot of stuff that you're going to need to make now that you have this whole new brand. And maybe we did some collateral for them, but they have to now take their brand and use it. And that's always scary. Sometimes you can convince them to pay you per month to like doing ongoing work. Sometimes you can't. And unfortunately, I have seen many of my brands go to shit and it sucks, but you know that you did the work that you were hired to do and you promote what you did well and what you like. And then you use it as a way to say, hey, I know the value of what I could do for you down the road to the next client. And so, yeah, I mean, the one I showed you, NSCS, they're not an ongoing client. And I've seen some things that they've put out that really are lovely and other things that I'm like, ooh, I would have done that differently. But it is what it is. You know, they hired me for a certain task and I try to sell in our services as a company and what we can offer for them as a value. And sometimes they are willing to invest and sometimes they just can't, you know, afford that. So you do your best and know that like you're doing what you're being tasked to do and being successful in that. So do what now? Exactly. Yeah. You document the work you did well, and you use it as like fuel to say, hey, next time I sign a client like this, I'm going to convince them to at least just 5 hours a month or 10 hours a month. And so that will at least give you the opportunity to show them how to create things down the road. And maybe that will encourage them like, oh, that looks a lot better than what I did. I should have them do more work for me. So you can kind of use it as a way to sell in more work. So, yeah.
I'll let them ask theirs, but I know one student who would have this question.
Mhm.
Do you ever have something that you designed that you just absolutely loved and the client hated? Do you put that in your portfolio still somehow, or
Great
do you
question.
hide it?
Yes, I absolutely still put it in my portfolio. So I just try to remember that everything that we do, most of what we do is subjective. So even though there's a strategy and you do as much as you can to say, hey, this meets the strategy that you wanted for this project, they still just may say, I just don't still like it, you know, and that has happened before for me. And so in that case, like you still created that work and it's still beautiful and it still accomplishes a goal. So there's nothing to say that you can't still put it on your website and say, hey, I usually try to preface it and say this was an unused concept or this was an unused design, which happens all the time. And you can still showcase all the hard work that you put into it. I do that a lot. Our team will share like unused logo concepts that like we love and we're like, this is the one they're going to do. And they're like, that's my least favorite. And you're like, cool. So then you still post it on Instagram because you still made it and someone else may think it's cool and they may hire you because they like that style. So I just try to usually always note that it was an unused concept in case they go and look on like that client's Instagram, they're not going to see it. So as long as you note that it wasn't used, it's still your work and you can still be proud of it. So I mean, that's kind of the same as like doing like hypothetical work. So as a student, I always encourage people, like, if you want to do package design, if you want to design shoes, if you want to design, you know, beer cans, whatever you want to design, go and make some of that hypothetically for a random company that you think could improve on theirs, and then post it and just say it was an unused hypothetical concept. It's still your work. You're still doing all of the work to put into it and all of the work to create it. And someone will like it and may book you for it. So you can still do that even if you didn't get paid for the work.
How do you successfully rebrand yourself? For example, I'm trying to create a social media brand, but the work I have on there is not consistent with
Good question. So the work that you have branded yourself as right now is not the work you ultimately want to be doing. Okay. So there's a couple different thoughts there. I would say if you 100% know that the work you want to do is this over here, then I would say if people are following along with you on Instagram or wherever, TikTok, whatever you're doing, and you've started to build a following, those people are a good audience. So I wouldn't like stop and start over. I wouldn't lose them all. But what I would do is say, start bringing in some of this over here into this in a way that makes sense. So maybe, I don't quite know exactly what the industries are, but if you're doing something where there's a tie together, start to bring some of this into what you're doing on social and slowly start to phase out the stuff you don't want to do anymore. And ultimately, if people that are on there don't want to follow you for the other stuff, they'll unfollow you. So that doesn't really matter. That's one approach. The other approach that I have seen done before, which is a bit risky, but can be interesting, is just like, say you're going through a rebrand for your own personal brand, and launch that with like a bunch of hype, like put out there, like count down the days, do a big like logo launch for your new logo, put the work on there that you want to be doing, and just kind of like flip it. And at that point, same thing. If people think like, oh, like that's dope, like that's really cool, like I'll still follow along, then they will. And if they aren't interested, then they'll fall off. But I've seen both of those ways be successful. It just kind of depends on if you feel like there's a tie-in together, and if you can kind of merge the two, that's great, because you've already built, you know, an audience, which is one of the hardest parts. So if you can kind of merge them together, you could be in a really good spot. But I've seen both done successfully. So sorry, I know that's not like an exact answer, but hopefully that's helpful. Okay.
How do you determine how much to charge, especially starting out and you don't have a lot of experience?
That is a very good question, which I'm still trying to figure out the answer to. You know, there's not a right answer. I will say that. I will say that you deserve to be paid for your work. That is very important. I think that there's a lot of companies out there that will say, hey, I'm going to have 5 people submit designs and I'm going to pick one, and whoever I pick is going to get paid. And I would say, don't do that, because that's enabling more people to do that. You should be paid for the work that you do. So even if you don't feel like you should, you have value that you're bringing, even if it's just a little bit. So I'll start there. And then I would just say, start thinking about what you'd like to make per hour. That's how we do a lot of our billing, and how we bill clients is we base what we're doing on how long we think it will take us, which you will get better at as you do it a long time. When I first started, I was like, I don't know, maybe 2 hours, maybe 10 hours. Now I've gotten to where I can like pretty much gauge it within like the hour of how long I think something will take. So if you're doing a logo and you think that's going to take me 2 or 3 days, well, that's 16 to 24 hours. So obviously you're not working every hour, but you get the point. So then think about how much you want to make per hour. You are bringing a value. So you want to make more than minimum wage. You want to make, you know, as you continue to get better, you're going to charge more. You know, I think starting out somewhere between $30 and $50 an hour is great. I would say for a more developed seasoned designer, they're going to charge more like $50 to $75 an hour. More of an agency is going to charge more than that. So we charge a bit more than that because we have multiple minds now that are contributing. And, you know, based on, I once heard that for every year that you do it, like add $10 an hour to your rate. So maybe that's an extreme, but, you know, in general, think about what you want to make per hour and about how long it takes you, and try to estimate it that way. You can also just like Google, like, what is a general logo going for? Don't look at like 99 designs, because that's a whole different thing. But like in general, like you're going to be able to see what like a freelancer probably is charging somewhere online, and just kind of like ebb and flow from there. Just know that like some people will say no because they think you're too expensive, and other people will say yes and think you're not charging enough. So you just have to be confident in like knowing that you're getting the value out of whatever you're charging, and that you feel like you're getting paid what you should be, and then change it if you don't and adjust it and try something new. I mean, I still feel like I don't quite understand how much even we should be charging, and we're just doing our best to like figure that out along the way. So, but if you have more like specific questions about like charging for like certain things, you can email me and I can try to help you out more. But anybody else? Yeah, that's a great question. I would definitely say try to utilize some of those like organizations. Creative Mornings is one of my favorites. I think they're doing a really good job. It's not just design people, it's creative people. So it's, architects and interior designers and writers and designers, animators, video people, like all kinds of anybody that's creative. I mean, their whole motto is like everybody's creative. So go onto Creative Mornings website and there's an Indianapolis chapter and you can like join the email list and find out when they're having events. I don't know if they've been having any because of COVID. So that kind of sucks, but I know they probably will be at some point. So I would look into that. AIGA is another great one in Indy that they have a lot of events that they put on, things like that. There is a indie design Slack channel. So if you're on Slack, can you search for you can probably like search for Slack communities and there's one that's indie design because there's an indie design week, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but that's like a week-long thing that Indie does that they put on where they have speakers and they have workshops and talks and all kinds of stuff. I think I just saw it was postponed till the fall. So you'd have a little time to get on that. But if you search for Indie Design Week on social media, there's some stuff there where you can get connected. Honestly, just like try to be as up as you can as like anything happening in the design community and just start going to those things. Reach out to other people that you've seen or know that are creative and just say, hey, can we grab coffee? Utilize these people and just say like, hey, do you guys want to get together? I have designers I've just met through the years that I kind of confide in that I'll use like, hey, I just need to like vent. Can we go get a drink after work, whatever? And like, they'll connect you probably with other designers. So I know that's not like an exact answer, but those are some good places where you can start to get connected with other design people as well. So
you're the third person that has mentioned that since Friday to me. And so it must be like a post-COVID effect or something. You guys are like wanting to see
get community
more and that kind of thing. So one student, haven't met them, but Alex Taylor wanted to have a CIGT late night lab night. So in ET 321 on Thursday, just between 5 and 8:30. Like the idea is you just go and work on your projects, but there'll be other people there.
That's cool.
Ask, questions or just hang out or, order pizza, or, don't get on the computers, but.
Alec brought up another.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, awesome.
That's awesome. Alec brought up another good point, which is like, there's like co-working spaces in Indianapolis too. So I know obviously they cost money, but I think there's a student rate where if you want to like just go and have a space to work from, like it's used a lot of times for like freelancers or businesses that don't have an office, but there's a ton of people that are working out of those spaces that are like in their careers, building businesses, that kind of thing. Like the Speakeasy is one that I have quite a few people that I'm connected with that work from. So we're planning, we have a membership there. So we'll go and like, we'll work from there a couple days a week and we'll meet people that way, connect. And there's other co-working spaces, Cohatch and Hinge and Pin Bureau. I mean, there's so many here. So that's another option too.
We want to be mindful of your time. So
Yeah.
thanks so much and for coming out.
Thank you guys. Really, I appreciate it.
Don't forget, I gave you all an assignment to kind of explain what, so if you're in 351, you have till tonight. So type it up right now. Like you could do it on your phone even. Just what'd you learn? 251, same assignment, but you got an extra couple days because we have to put it on WordPress and do a journal post.
Thank you, everybody. Email me if you have questions.
Thanks online. We'll see you later.
Yeah.